Good thing Carol here.
It would have been two of us.
I guess we could have had her by phone. Okay, so we're going to go to our last action item. I, Civil Grand Jury Report 1604 about EpiPen.
I'm going to ask Ms. Woodman to report on this item.
Okay, what you have before you is a letter that is drafted for us to send on your behalf to the 2015-16 Contra Costa Grand Jury. And it has to do with a report that is dated May 31st, 2016, and their findings and recommendations having to do with the need and use of EpiPens in our schools. So I'll just give you a little background information. I think it'll be helpful. January 1st, 2015, a bill was passed, 1266 is the name of the bill, and it's a bill that assists public schools in responding to instances of anaphylactic shock, severe and potentially life-threatening allergic reaction. So the new law requires school districts to provide epinephrine auto-injectors, otherwise known by most people as EpiPens, but pens is how we'll refer to them, to school nurses and other personnel who have been trained in their use. So epinephrine is a medication that can reverse the effects of an anaphylaxis reaction. And when administered as a shot through an auto-injector or a pen, and a delay of minutes can actually, in administering this particular medication can result in death. So this is a very serious matter. Food is the most common known allergen. Other allergens or triggers for this type of reaction can include biting insects, medications, latex. At times the trigger is unknown and a student isn't even identified as a student with a particular allergy. In our county alone, there are 1,200 students who are identified as having known allergies, and there may be an additional 6,000 to 12,000 students with allergies that are unknown to their parents or caregivers. So we wouldn't have any idea of whether these students have allergies. So the bill essentially requires schools to stock pens in case of emergency, train nurses and staff volunteers to administer pens to students and indemnify employees who volunteer, set minimum standards of training for pen administration and review their adequacy in every 5 years, and keep and maintain prescriptions for these pens up to date. So what you have before you is a written response to questions posed by the grand jury regarding their report, and their report is entitled, Are Our Schools in Compliance with the EpiPen Law, SB 1266. The district was asked to respond to specified findings and recommendations. I won't read each of them to you, but am prepared to answer any questions you may have. And then if you're in agreement with the responses in the letter, we will issue those responses to the grand jury on your behalf from Dr. Seaton.
Thank you. Yep. Any questions from the board? I have a question about field trips. Do we not have EpiPens on field trips unless there's a student with a known allergy who brings their own?
That's the current practice. Currently in Sacramento, they're considering legislation which will give us more guidance on that particular practice. We may adopt our own practice having to do with that, but we're going to look at what neighboring districts are going to be doing and take some more time to evaluate that. But we should have some recommendation coming forth by January to the board.
Any other questions? Any comments from the public? Yes.
Hi, I just thought that I would add my name's Naomi Greenstone, and I am a parent of a kindergartner at Glorietta, who thankfully does not have an allergy, but I understand that approximately 10% of the students at Glorietta do. One of his best friends does. And I know that it's always been a struggle for his parents, especially in the case of field trips, which was a great question that you had brought up. I remember on a kindergarten field trip that was at the Oakland Zoo, parent volunteers were breaking up the kids into groups of 2 or so to go wander around the zoo, and 2 kids who had EpiPen issues were not able to carry the EpiPens in their backpacks because it was against a school rule. And so the teacher had to carry it, but who was not with the students. And the guidance was, well, if there's an emergency, call me. And I'm sure, as probably most of you have been to Oakland Zoo, to find someone in 10 minutes, which is usually the time you need to be able to use an EpiPen so that it's effective, it might very well not happen. And that was so frightening for the parents that they then were there to make sure, took time off of work to be there with their student, or their child, to be able to walk around the park with them. So I think it's something that's really important that should be addressed as well. And I know that at Glorietta, there were incidents of a number of EpiPens being stolen that people were purchasing, parents were purchasing for their own children, but there was a problem with a number of them being stolen last year. And I know that the cost of well, it's been quite in the news about the cost of the EpiPens, but it's about, the friend in particular has about an $800 expense every 8 months to purchase new EpiPens for the school, and then they were stolen. So it would be great if there was something that would help alleviate the financial burden, as well as something that would be in place for field trips and training for all school personnel, as well as after-school programs like Gopher Club or the comparables at other schools, because those individuals are not trained.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Back to the board. There's no further solid decision action item.
That we approve the response in action item I.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. And then move on to our discussion items. First, item A, board policy and AR 5132, dress and grooming.
So this item came to our attention, I believe, partially because of our previous speaker from the audience, Naomi Greenstone, who brought it to our attention that our particular administrative regulation in our board policies and administrative regulations, it was very outdated. It was very gender specific and hadn't been updated in a number of years. I think initially our BPAR 5132 dress and grooming were approved in 1999 and revised in 2008, but there have been no revisions since then. So what we did was to attempt to make the language in the administrative regulation more gender neutral and supportive of religious and cultural beliefs of students through some suggested language. I did have conversations with a member of the California School Boards Association team that helps write these policies, suggested language for CSBA's gamut. And he did mention that this is on kind of the list for them to look at, because they recognize that their model language is still kind of, is woefully inadequate based on the times in which we live. And so if you look at the attachment, the first page, the board policy, as typical for board policies, is very much overarching and general. There are no suggested changes to it. As you scroll to the second page, and I can make it a bit bigger, we get to number 3, hats, caps, and other head coverings shall not be worn indoors. And suggested tweak to that, religious and or cultural exceptions may be granted by the superintendent or his/her designee. Number 4, you'll notice below that has references to different types of garments that are really female only, very much gender specific. And so the attempt here was to make it more gender neutral. Clothes shall be sufficient to conceal undergarments and the abdomen/torso at all times. And then with the final sentence added there, the superintendent or his/her designee may make exceptions for physical education classes or extracurricular sports as appropriate. If you have a cross-country after-school club or team, there could be instances where the abdomen torso is, it's appropriate to have it revealed. So we just wanted to make this exception for that. And then number 5, we just eliminated altogether. Gym shorts may not be worn in classes other than PE, because they currently are worn. And, you know, we shouldn't have a policy if we don't believe in it and it's not enforced. Keeping in mind that in the board policy language, it already discusses the fact that clothing should not be distracting to the educational process, and it should provide students, it should be such that it is safe for them to wear in the educational environment. So, barring that, and I believe the only other addition was at the very end, or omission, I should say. There's a strike through on no item of dress or manner of grooming may interfere with the educational process or safety of the student involved, because that's duplicative. That same language is in the actual board policy before. So this is again an attempt to update this language, make it more culturally, sensitive and culturally and sensitive to various religions, as well as less gender specific. You do not have to approve administrative regulations. However, this is one that I think it'll be important that you weigh in on, because I'll be continuing to work with the principals and as we discuss taking this forward for them to review as staff and notify parents of changes.
So Carolyn, what's the thought behind hats, caps, and other head coverings shall not be worn indoors?
I believe that that language, potentially, Mr. Rand, comes from the belief that it's not appropriate to, I think that's kind of from the past, maybe, yeah, I'm trying to think how to word it, but that it was not appropriate to wear.
Gentlemen don't wear hats inside.
Correct.
Okay.
I think it comes from that era, and we could potentially even strike that if we so wanted to. Again, we want to make sure that we have policies and administrative regulations that we believe in and that are going to be enforced is a strong word, but that we're going to follow.
Yeah. On that one, I'd be curious to hear what principals have to say, with the principals getting input from teachers. I'd just be curious on that one. And then has the midriff piece, bare midriff piece, so that's been an existing policy, clothes shall be sufficient to conceal undergarments and the abdomen torso at all times?
So, and the abdomen torso is new suggested language, that's why it's bolded and italicized.
Okay.
So to conceal undergarments at all times was the previous language,
Oh.
but then in addition to that, it talked about see-through or fishnet fabrics,
Right.
halter tops, and so on, which was very gender specific.
But I guess the past one did say bare midriffs. which
Bare
would be-
midriffs,
Which is kind of more
Correct.
gender specific.
that's what
Okay.
the thinking was.
And is the thought that a bare abdomen torso is distracting?
I believe the thought is it's not really appropriate dress for the school setting, the
Okay.
classroom setting.
Yeah.
But for physical education, that could be an
Yeah,
exception.
right, just cross country. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
The question that popped in my mind when I read it was about gym shorts, and I'd just like to get the feedback, especially at OIS. With 2 young boys, I get everyone is wearing all sorts of and sizes of shorts that are gym-type shorts all the time, so I don't think we should have something that isn't enforced. But I feel like there's the OIS rule that they don't want the gym shorts that you exercised in that day worn in class, which seems to me a wise policy. So, I don't know if, by getting rid of that, we're interfering with that. I'd love to get the feedback from OIS about that.
Well, absolutely, I was just going to
Because
say.
they're drilled very early about that.
I have spoken with Mr. Randall, but he has not had an opportunity, because this is fairly new suggested language, to share it with staff. And nor have I had an opportunity to really discuss this at length with the elementary principals and they with their staff, so.
The PE teachers, I'm sure, will.
Yeah.
Well, OAS, I think, has their own dress code policy, which might have something in there about PE uniforms
I bet it
being,
does.
that you can't wear your PE uniform outside of PE.
Well, and also, they can't wear their Lulus in PE.
Mm.
That's my understanding, they
And
have
that
to go.
they have to dress.
Yeah, they have
Right.
to change in,
Yeah.
absolutely, you
So
have
they're
to
not
change.
wearing those shorts.
So
Yeah.
maybe we need to take a look at
Yeah,
their policy, because maybe we can, because gym shorts, in my mind, means like the basketball shorts that every kid
Right, but
every
using, yeah,
boy wears, you know?
right.
Well, I know my son's PE shorts sat in his locker for too long and could have walked on their own by the time I got them into the washing machine. So, in deference to Ms. Palmer Collins and our other middle school teachers, we want to make sure that the classrooms smell good and learning can happen.
This is one of the first years that we've actually required sixth graders to dress out for PE. It used to be that, you know, sixth graders didn't sweat and smell bad.
Well, maybe we can look at.
I have
Maybe
a
see
small
how that coordinates, because if it's already in their policy, maybe it's more appropriate there, or their dress code.
Well, but we don't want this conflicting.
inadvertently dropping gym shorts here.
So I would.
Dropping gym shorts here doesn't necessarily conflict with that, though, it's just saying, if the school site has a policy that says you can't wear your PE uniform anywhere
Yeah.
but you have to wear it in PE, but you can't wear it outside of PE, that might be fine.
Well, I do think it's a good opportunity to take a look at OAS's, because I thought like, for cutoff jean shorts, the pockets can't show below the level of shorts. And then I heard at one point that when they extend their hands, their shorts have to go below their fingers on the sides, and
That's what it was for
Finger for your
girls.
spaghetti
2
strap.
fingers for your spaghetti straps, so.
Yeah, there was all sorts of that.
But that's where, at the school sites,
Yeah.
let them make those school site specific decisions, I think, is the idea. And here, just have something more general.
Okay,
I mean, you're right, probably about the hat. I bet you a lot of
Yeah.
kids are walking around wearing hats all day, and maybe we don't wanna have that in our regs.
We, of course,
Well-
have to allow hats for outdoors for sun protection, that's part of
Yeah.
ed code.
And I don't know that I get the reasoning of other head covers on traditional guys, so I agree with the, being appropriate, but there are all sorts of headdress that either are cultural or a style that I'm not sure people would find offensive in a classroom, but I'd love to hear.
Right.
Well, and then the other thing on the head covering is it says maybe granted by the superintendent or his or her designee, so that means the principal. I was gonna
Correct.
say, you don't want to have to go to the superintendent every time for something
You
like
know what?
this.
Not,
Yeah.
not particularly, no.
Okay, but in terms of, in general, yeah, I mean, OAS's, dress code could be more specific and whatever, but whatever we put in here has to work, so it does need to be looked at against the other one.
Absolutely, and I did speak to Mr. Randall in particular about this, but we can take a look. He didn't have his policy out in front of him while we looked at it, so we do want to make sure that ours doesn't conflict or constrict what they have, and that this can work, and really meets the goal for which it was intended, which is we want to make sure that we're culturally sensitive to religious beliefs, and that our policies are not so gender specific. I think those were goals.
Yeah, I think the sentence about religious and our cultural exception should be looked at very carefully, because it does feel a little like, you know, if you're wearing something over your head for religious reasons, sometimes it's a certain time of year or a holiday or whatever, then, you know, I don't know, it just feels like we need to be really careful about that, how we're wording that. And is that how we want it in there? And I wanted to say one other thing, the gym shorts, to me, gym shorts are just gym shorts that kids wear all the time, but what we're talking about is the PE shorts that you don't want.
PE
the PE
uniform, I think that's the
So I
language.
think there almost needs to be the wording of, you know, distinguishing those two.
But
Uniform as
OAS
opposed
is the
to-
only school that we have that has PE uniforms, and that's what I'm saying, that if they're addressing that in their dress code, then maybe just striking out the gym shorts thing, which also in my mind is more like regular basketball
Gym
shorts,
shorts, yeah.
is sufficient, and then they are having their regulations that rule their school site, the elementary schools, you know, change out for PE. You know, so we need to
Well-
go take a look at that policy and see how that coordinates.
Well, I feel like it's a good first stab. I appreciate your input and your questions and comments, and our parent who got the ball rolling. Thank you.
You're welcome. Naomi, I do have a speaker card from Naomi Greenstone on this.
I'll go up just since I have some papers. Hello, my name is Naomi Greenstone. I said before that my son was in kindergarten. That was because I was talking about a kindergarten story, but he's actually in second grade. So there's no correction to that. I first want to thank all of you and also Carol, because all of you responded very quickly to my email from a number of months ago when I just happened to spot this. And even though I have a son, I happen to just be very, aware of issues regarding gender because I happen to be an employment attorney, so I'm always dealing with issues about gender discrimination or being gender neutral. And so I really appreciate the thought and care that each of you have put into this and really like what you put forward. There are probably just two things I wanted to bring up. One of them is, I think the statement, Sarah, that you had brought up about the religious and or cultural exceptions. It would seem to me like if you had in that sentence for number 3, hats, caps, and other head coverings shall not be worn indoors except for religious purposes, not to place a burden on a student to have to get permission to wear something that they shouldn't have to get permission for, is something I think would be really important. And that's, of course, if we even go with restricting indoors. I could see some value with restricting hats indoors because people can wear their brims low sitting in class and not really perhaps be paying attention. I think it would be good. Right. So I could see value in having no visor type hats because that would be difficult probably for eye contact and knowing that a kid is paying attention. The second one is on section 4 with regard to the word torso. And it's probably just me being nitpicky because I'm a lawyer and I look at words. But when I looked up the definition of torso in Merriam-Webster Dictionary, it says that a torso is the main part of the human body, not including the head, the arms, or the legs, which therefore means the neck, right? And which means that according to this, we have to all wear turtlenecks, which given the heat we have here in Orinda, we don't want to do that. So what I thought is we could take out the word torso or see what the issue is that we're concerned about. Is it shoulders that we're concerned about? Is it low cut?
I think it's abdomen.
So abdomen is, so then if we say abdomen, then we're fine. So if we just take out torso, then that could be just fine, because I've printed out a number of pictures of adorable kids on their class photo day, which would all violate this policy. So I don't need to necessarily show you those some cute pictures from our local schools. But that I think is about it. This is, I think, a wonderful step forward, and I really appreciate that I could just sort of throw this out to you guys and you could take it and run with it. So thank you.
Let us know if you see anything else in other policies.
I will. I don't know if you want to actually say that, but I will.
Any other comments from the public?
I would say that for any of these policies, we need to ensure that that enforcement is uniform. It's really difficult if a policy is in place. I'm thinking about the hats, and I'm old, and this is the first year I've not made a deal about hats in the classroom, and it's such a relief. It's because now I'm focusing on teaching instead of hats. At the same time, because I'm old, it bothers me that they're wearing hats. So, if all the teachers said no hats, cool. If some teachers are saying hats and others not, it becomes an issue. Same with gum chewing, right, the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, just putting that out.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Back to the board, any further comments from the board? Giving you some good direction.
Thank you, I really appreciate it.
Okay. Move on to discussion item B, facilities priorities update. Stuart.
So yes, I'm Mr. House right now. So as the board is aware, Mr. House is not available to be here tonight, so I am filling in for him. But he did provide a great deal of information about the facilities priorities list that was created, and you have looked at on a few occasions, if I'm not mistaken. There were a number of projects that were listed for each school site. And in the attachment below, and I think there are actually several attachments below, there are Fund 40 priorities for each school site. And as you review those attachments, you'll see that the vast majority of those identified projects have been completed. It's quite remarkable. In addition, there were a few projects that I understand the board identified that I believe are actually in the agenda bill. Del Rey had 3 that are noted there: expanding the outdoor area next to the multipurpose room for lunch area, outdoor chilled water fountain with bottle filling, kind of known as a hydration station is my understanding. And then the multipurpose room window replacement, which was postponed. Sleepy Hollow, renovate non-compliant multipurpose room bathroom, and at OIS, remove wall and utility pipes in the former multipurpose room kitchen, and remove the walk-in refrigerator in the multipurpose room kitchen. So those projects have not been completed to date, but we felt it was important to let you know, given all the work that was accomplished this summer, where we were with those items and how you might want to proceed moving forward, given that we do still have monies from the sale of the land, our Pulte funds.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions from the board?
First of all, Julia, I want to appreciate that you've really stayed focused on maintaining this list. And we should be focused on it. It's a ton of money. It's really important how we spend it. We put a lot of time into getting input from stakeholders on what they think we should be spending this money on. And of those meetings, we went out to all those school sites. We had lots of meetings, and the response, the people that actually showed up to those meetings, it was very lightly attended. And most of them, most loudly what we heard, and it could have been a vocal minority, but it was vocal, was they wanted restroom upgrades. And, you know, I see more on here about restroom upgrades, and I think we've done a great job of that. I really, you know, kind of the spirit of the conversation was, wow, the bathrooms looked like they were built in the 50s. The tiles were gray, and it smelled like 30 years of kids peeing on the walls. And the stalls were old, and the lighting was poor, and the mirrors were scratched. And so that's been, I think that's been really, really successful. And then the number 2 thing we heard about was painting the schools. And we have painted the schools, and the schools look great. And personally, I think the installation of the solar has made the schools look better. I think it's really brought the schools more up to date. So I think we've done a lot of really positive things. If Stuart were here, I just want to share with him, and I'll let you, Carolyn, that I'm just, specifically, we could just take, for example, the AC stopgap measures. You know, maybe the number's a little high in budgeting, but to be able to do that and do it so quickly at a really reasonable cost. Because we got such strong feedback, especially from teachers, I'm just so appreciative of Stuart's efforts and his staff's efforts along that road. And I just want to thank Teresa, because I know no good spreadsheet like the summary of Fund 40 expenditures occurs without a great CBO. I just want to thank you for this one-page succinct list. And it's readable, and even I can understand it. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciate just to be able to see the numbers there, see where we are, see what work we have ahead of us. Separately, I'll shift gears and just say that, you know, I've heard from the board, other members of the board, at sometimes a majority of the board, this discussion of maybe we shouldn't replace 40 doors that are rotting when we should scrape the school. And discussions about bond potential in 2018, et cetera, et cetera. So I think, individually I'll say, I think I'm starting to get to that tipping point where we're looking at future spending. I think those doors need to be replaced. Some of the doors I think are in horrible condition and need to be replaced, but I just want to recognize that as a board we've talked about at what point do you say, let's stop, why would we spend $80,000 on doors that we're going to rip out in 5 or 10 years, or whatever, you know, however far away we are. My comments.
Other questions from the board?
Well, I just want to add, and there's been a lot that's gone into this, and I'm glad you brought up the solar. And also, you know, we've done the efficiencies, the what do we call them? You know, energy efficiencies, we've done a lot.
39?
Prop 39, there was a lot of work that was done in that area before we even did solar. The air conditioning was a big request, and at least we have the stopgap measures, but we need to keep looking forward at that as to what we're going to do going forward. But that comes back to Matt's point about we kind of have to know where we're going. It would be good to hear, once Stuart gets back, some sort of feedback, more thorough feedback on the whole air conditioning thing. Now that the stopgap measures are in, how's that going? Are we, you know? And that's it for me right now.
I can comment on the stopgap air conditioning measures, that it's noted in the in progress category, because some of the units still have to be wired. There were some circuit issues, and so they're working, but it's, to get them wired properly, we're still in progress with that. And so Stuart felt like it needed to be placed in the in progress category for that reason.
I want to agree with Matt, that I think that pretty soon as a board, in our planning process, we've got to think about whether and how to spend the rest of the chunk of this funding based on the building plan. But one thing mentioned in the memo that may not be affected by a building plan that I think we should think about is condition of the sports fields at all the schools. That's something that whatever we do with the buildings, those fields are still there. We hear from parents, and I think it'd be nice to have Stuart's evaluation on that, because I know when he first came, he made some mention of having looked at the fields and having some different maybe opinions of what he could do with that based on his past experience. So I'd like to hear that as something that we don't have to wait on a building plan for if we're looking for another major project.
Well, and I think, you know, one of the reasons that I asked that we get this update is because I wanted to see how much have we spent, what have we done, what have we gotten off our list, where are we at, right? We've talked about, we have, as a board, wanting to go out for a bond in 2018, and I agree with what Matt was just saying about where do you reach that point where, you know, we did a lot of deferred maintenance with that money, you know, a lot of pipes, a lot of roofs, a lot of, you know, not very exciting things that really helped with schools. And then we were able to do some things that you could actually more visibly see, which was nice also, but we really made a ton of progress on those lists from, like, what year was the task force? 2012?
Tyson was on it.
Yeah, Tyson was on it. So, you know, I feel really positive about how much progress we've made on that. And I agree that now it's sort of the point of, okay, we have funds left. Are there other projects that should be or need to be done? You know, specifically looking at fields. You know, we had someone speak tonight about, you know, are there additional safety concerns that need to be addressed? Are there other, you know, safety issues or health issues at other school sites that might have arisen since we've last approached them? Are there, you know, other things bubbling sort of to the top that we do want to address? I mean, if we are interested in going out for a bond, having a sum of money to offset some of the bond that you have to go out for is not a bad thing. I mean, I think we've spent the money that we've spent wisely, but, you know, I mean, I just think this fits really nicely in with the strategic planning process that's about to begin, and we'll move forward quickly, and with, you know, looking at a master facilities plan update and things like that, that will, you know, move us forward towards really improving our schools. So, you know, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. I was impressed with how many things we got off those lists, and really, I agree with you, doors is like, you know, you start getting into that thought process, like, yeah, the doors need replacing, but, you know, what if we're, you know, totally redoing that building, then, you know, why are you spending that money if in a couple of years you could be doing something different? And it becomes a very hard balancing act trying to figure out what to do and what not to do, and that's why maybe field renovations become, you know, aside from the obvious need, become something that maybe is, something that the time has come for. So, those are my thoughts, but are there any comments from the public? So I want, you know, I hope you do convey to Stuart, wherever he may be,
And
and compliment him on all the projects that have been done, and thank him for this update before he left. But my thought is to, you know, maybe Stuart go back to the sites to get any further sort of high priority needs from the sites. And then let's come back and talk about those items along with field renovations and anything else we might wanna move forward on. Does that sound?
Well, yeah, I wanted to just add, the Gen 7 meeting, now that's using, redevelopment funds, so I didn't look to see if that's on here. But we had, it's probably not,
I don't think that was on this.
No,
Okay.
it's on this list.
Fund 40, okay, but in regards to, you know, moving forward and how we're doing it and going after a bond potentially, the conversation that I was able to attend at the district office about that, there was some conversation regarding the Del Rey site, just because it's not as clear, those portables that are being replaced, in terms of the long run and the siting of the campus. And it just occurred to me, you know, in going forward and considering a bond, we should probably get our architect or somebody or some other consultant, or be thinking about this for whenever we're ready to do that, to think about, you know, the process of that. And I did attend that one meeting, and he did a great job with a large stakeholder group explaining the Gen 7 process for the next steps for both Glorieta and Del Rey. So I just wanted to mention that.
So,
I remember too, I had one question on the, I didn't have a chance to ask the superintendent about it earlier, on the Sleepy Hollow list. They had a portable replacement under developer fees. That's what actually reminded me of your question. And I didn't remember that, and I wondered, you know,
On the Sleepy Hollow list?
yeah.
Development, the last line,
Last
developer
line.
fees recommended priority projects.
Yeah. I think we discussed at a prior board meeting about placement in schools for the portables, the modulars, and we talked about that being at Del Rey and Glorieta, the schools with most need. And then we started talking about other schools and said, no, we don't have priorities at those schools yet. So I saw this and I didn't know if that was something that was developed, and I just noticed it, so I wanted to know where that came from.
And I can check with Stuart when he returns. It could be that the portables referred to here are newer, because I know that Glorieta's.
There's an error here.
Oh, it's an error?
When you
That's what it
click
was.
on what it says Sleepy
you.
Hollow,
Yeah, it's the Del Rey.
when you
Del
open
Rey.
it, it actually opens to Del Rey.
There we go.
Ah, okay.
so,
That's why.
So then what happens? If we click on Del Rey, does it,
Yeah.
that
no, it
makes
still
sense.
says Del
Yeah.
Rey.
That's like
So
I remember us having
Sleepy
that
Hollows is
conversation.
missing, apparently,
Yeah,
because Del Rey is listed twice. So that's the answer.
there we go.
Problem solved.
Okay. Okay, well, do we have consensus on having Stuart go back out to the sites and just see if there are other priorities that have bubbled to the surface since,
You mean go talk to the principals, or?
yeah.
And to take a look at the sports field, get a report on that.
Yeah, we should get an update on the fields.
He was gonna go out and get general pricing.
Yeah.
That's where we left it.
Fields?
Yeah.
So maybe you can.
On one of them, it says R&R the field. It says so right here under, if you look at Glorieta,
There's a few
Yeah.
of them, I think
Yeah.
it is listed in.
that's remove and replace.
Yeah.
Lower field, Oh, that's just the irrigation system at 70,000.
I thought that,
Thought-
he showed me something that was close to completely redoing the lower,
Okay.
one of the lower.
It would cover the lower field.
Mhm.
And it makes sense to do that when you do irrigation.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
But, yeah, I mean, on
Well-
Wagner, it says rebuild full field irrigation,
Yeah.
no price tag on it, but I'm just saying there is something
Okay.
listed on more than one. Who knows what Sleepy Hollow does?
Yeah, but we don't need any.
Okay, so if he could come back to us with information on the field renovations, as well as going back to the principals and seeing if there are other priorities that aren't on these lists. Okay, now we'll move on to consent calendar. Items listed below are considered to be routine and acted on by the board in one motion. Do we have a motion on the consent calendar?
I move we approve the consent calendar.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. We are now on board reports. Does any board member have a board report?
I do. I just wanted to report, there were 2 meetings, Ledge Team, the one I previously mentioned, the Oclone's school site, that is the Los Troncos Creek Council, and I was glad that our superintendent was able to participate, as I mentioned earlier, and that was a great meeting, to have 3 superintendents and the impact and conversation around those 3 propositions. And then the other one was the Contra Costa School Boards Association meeting, which is more of a county-wide group, and someone from the county office was our speaker, Pam Comfort, yeah, who is apparently the deputy superintendent. Anyway, she gave a great talk about kind of telling your story, but it was, you know, you could use it in any way you wanted, but she was a great speaker, and it was a really great time to see other board members from other districts and other superintendents. So that was just 2 nice events.
I wanted to mention 2 nice events too, and put out some kudos to staff. Over the last couple of weeks, I attended the second of the Kid Power meetings at Glorietta, and it was just a tremendous evening. A lot of things we talked about wanting to see as a positive, very engaged way to deal with the subject matter. And that takes a lot of extra time. The number of parents there, very impressive, and I wanted to give kudos to Kathy for the extra time that takes. It's a lot of time, and I think really well invested time. It was a wonderful meeting, and I thank you for that. The other meeting I stopped in on was the Poise meeting, another very important and not easy to engage topic, and the extra effort we do there helps serve all of our students. It would be very easy not to do something like that when you're, you know, faced with all sorts of priorities. Again, a lot of extra time by parents and teacher volunteers, but by Jen, another great meeting. And, you know, on top of everything else you do, thank you for doing that. Those are 2 just very great investments of our time and effort. They were great, thanks.
I also attended the Kid Power event at Delray, and it was very informative, very well done, I thought, and thank you, Kathy, for doing a little skit with me. Against our will. I also am now on the school bus committee, thank you, Matt. And I attended my first meeting. I'm now on a subcommittee. Dealing with bus stop line of sight issues in Orinda, which is a concern. And we have our first subcommittee meeting tomorrow, one with Amy Worth and David Gerson from Lafayette. So I will have an update. And we're actually, the bus committee is meeting next week again. So we're actually meeting more frequently right now to try to address some of those concerns. There were also, the first report we received about the number of late buses, or very Orinda-centric, I would say, OUSD-centric, which is something I'm gonna keep my eye on. I'm concerned that we seem to be having the most late buses of all the communities, so I'm learning as I go here, I'm new to the committee, but, it was interesting, so I'll have more to report at our next meeting. We'll have a subcommittee meeting probably a couple of times, and another, main committee meeting, so. That's what I'm doing.
Curious to hear about the driver shortage issue, and how that's working out.
Yeah, they said that they brought up, some drivers from LA recently, so they're currently okay on their number of drivers, but that those people could get recalled down south at any point. So they felt like they are, so, I don't know, I think it's a constant problem.
One of the challenges with Orinda Hills and lines of sight, et cetera, is that they can only drive smaller buses. You can't drive a big giant school bus up El Toinal or over, behind the lake, et cetera. And that also that only certain drivers can drive those buses. So they can't just put any driver on those tricky routes. So it is a challenge. And not only are they having a driver shortage, they can't get the buses fixed.
Right.
They
so that
have
was the
very
other issue.
few small buses to drive in our hills. All it takes is one of those buses to go down,
Yeah.
and then they don't have a mechanic to work on it.
And they say, well, and because you're hilly, our buses break down more often because of you.
So it's we have a unique set of
Yeah,
challenges.
so it's interesting, so I'm learning as I go on that one, but,
And the line of sight, you mentioned line of sight, is that shrubbery or something?
that has to do with bus stops, actually.
Not being in a weird
Locations.
corner.
Yeah,
And it's,
because kids are gonna be sitting there,
But
they
not-
wanna make sure cars from both directions can see the kids that are waiting for the bus. Cars, student safety before the bus gets there, or once the kids are dropped off.
So, we should probably, you probably have a lot of information you could share with me maybe at some points, but, now we're on to future agenda items. I made a note about the school safety pursuant to, public comment that we got as a future agenda item.
Yeah, I mean, field renovations on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's on there. So, yeah. Okay, this time I will entertain a motion to
I
adjourn.
move we adjourn.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wow, 9 o'clock.
Started at
And no
It started at
close.
6,
I know.
right.
Don't get used to it.